950. Real Texas, Real Talk. KPRC Houston, an iHeart radio station.
There's a headline that is running, and when I first saw a headline, I thought, well, maybe it's just whoever wrote the headline, maybe they're being a little overdramatic. Maybe it's not as bad as it seems. The headline is Austin at the brink of disaster as police shortages hit crisis level. God help us all. And especially the at the brink of disaster, that's pretty extreme, right? Until I realized that it was the police association, the Austin Police Association president, Michael Bullock, is the one who said it. So what's going on in Austin, and at this point, is it fixable? Especially considering how much that police department there has been defunded. Joining us to talk about it is noted police expert, among other things. He's a criminologist, Dr. Alex Del Carmen. He's at Tarleton University. Alex, welcome back to the show. What do you think about what's going on in Austin right now with that police department?
Thanks for having me. I think it's as bad as they say it is, right? I mean, we have seen over the years just fading away of resources for law enforcement. And as I have been saying this even in your show, that, you know, we were going to see a day that, you know, people were going to be saying, gee, what happened to us? How come we have this crime rate that we just can't control? And, you know, prosecutors that are not willing to do their job. And that's exactly what we're seeing now in Austin. So it's very concerning.
Well, and evidently the residents are concerned, but I would say to the residents, did you not understand what you were voting for? You voted for the members of city council who have done all this. Is there a disconnect between the voters and who they're electing to office as far as what those politicians are going to do when they get there?
Yeah, you know, I think over the years what we have seen is that the biggest critics of law enforcement as a whole, in other words, the people that don't have a reason to criticize it, that they just criticize it because that's the quote-unquote cool thing to do, what they don't realize is the importance of law enforcement in their lives. It's sort of been, in many ways, the contradiction, right? That, hey, on the one hand, I don't want you here, but on the other hand, when I'm in trouble, I'm going to call 911 and I need you here within 3 seconds. And so, you know, that's kind of what we're seeing now. Is like all of a sudden people are realizing that, gee, you know, after all, we needed funded, you know, law enforcement components, and we also needed good police officers to be out there. And so I hope, and my sincere hope is that we see this as not a trend, but rather something that the other entities across the United States are going to look at this and say, gee, we don't want to end up like them. We want to do something about it now because the catch-up moments are behind us now.
Well, hopefully it's a big wake-up call for a lot of communities, including Houston, by the way. As you're only too well aware, what do we have? Something like 264,000 potential criminal cases that went uninvestigated due to a lack of manpower.
Yep, and that's all that we know, right? So imagine other cities across the United States that are in the thousands, you know, when it comes to cases like that. And I mean, my concern, quite honestly, is that we criminologists, let me put it to you this way, we criminologists have not even started to measure the impact that this has had on law enforcement, on their lack of stability as it relates to the profession, the impact that this has had on fear of crime among the public, and then lastly, you know, this feeling of insecurity that we all endure now because people are scared. I mean, they know that there are not enough cops out there to respond to a 911 call, and you've got some agencies that are now taking calls online for non-priority situations. I mean, it's really alarming.
It is alarming. The only fix for this, I would think, is for major police departments, and this would include Austin, to recruit more officers. But it seems to me that so much damage has been done since George Floyd to police officers in the idea of becoming a policeman, in the idea that you may get arrested or you may get sued for trying to do your job. It seems like a pretty difficult position to even try to recruit for right now.
Yeah, part of the problem is that, you know, many entities across the United States right after COVID, they began to throw money at the problem, right? So many of these city councils, many jurisdictions, they were like, oh yeah, we need to give them a raise. And believe you me when I tell you, I think all cops deserve a raise, right? You know, a substantial raise, because what they do is a very hard job. But having said that, that's not going to solve the problem, right? So this is a vocation. It's not a career as much as a calling that a human being has to go serve others. And at times, you know, when situations demand it for you to risk your life, you know, for the benefit of somebody else. And so, you know, we need to have people that are in many ways reprogrammed to think that law enforcement is going to be the noblest of careers. But the public, some of the critics have done a horrible job in stigmatizing it to the extent that now you have 18 to 21-year-olds, which are typically those that are considered law enforcement, in terms of their careers at the entry level. And they're having second thoughts, and they're thinking, gee, if I want to be a law enforcement officer, maybe I'm going to go join the feds instead of doing anything municipal based, because the job is tough. The legal mandates are tough, and quite honestly, the pay is marginal.
Well, the pay's been marginal for a long, long time, and I think you already said this, but I don't know. It may be too late to fix it with pay. You could probably double your average police officer's salary right now, and that would not necessarily be enough to recruit the right kind of people of getting into law enforcement. And here's what I get concerned about, and I don't know if there's any evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, Dr. Del Carmen, on this, but it seems to me, I mean, no matter what kind of an occupation is, there are good people and bad people who are attracted to it. The good news is when there's a lot of people who are interested in a position like being a police officer, you can weed out the bad people and just hire the good people. But if you get desperate enough, are we at a time where there may be some bad apples that will sneak through the cracks just because you have to have bodies?
That's exactly right. And I think, as I've said before, publicly and privately, most police officers are honest, decent, hardworking people. I have been privileged to work with thousands of them over the past 27 years. And quite honestly, they're just amazing human beings, right? But like every profession out there, you find individuals that should have never been cops. And I think that what's actually failed the profession is the entry-level requirements that some of these agencies have had over the years, where they've looked the other way. They've been so desperate to hire people that they've hired the wrong person. Their training has not been as good. And then their accountability factor has not been as good. And so they kind of let them survive, in this wonderful profession, and unfortunately they give a bad name to the many and thousands of good police officers out there. So it's really sad, but what the effect of that is that the rest of us will endure for years to come is the stigma to the profession that has to be redone, and we have to almost like reconstruct socially what it means to be a police officer, give them a better salary, protect them, give them the type of trust that they deserve, and then in addition to that, be able to encourage our young people to join the noblest of all professions, right? So, and that's going to take, it's going to take a lot of work for that to happen. And I anticipate that we won't see the results of that until 10 or 15 years from now, if we start now.
I think you're probably right about that. I can't help but I want to get your thoughts on this too. I can't help but be struck by the irony of the people in a place like Austin, Texas, who defund the police, demean the police, try to make a case that we don't really need the police, and then are maybe some of the first people to go out and are also people, by the way, who don't want us to buy firearms, but yet they put us in a position where we are left to protect ourselves. And if we're left to protect ourselves, how else can we protect ourselves?
That's exactly right. And then the other part of the problem is that they don't look at data, right? They talk about science and they talk about data and this and that. Well, let's talk about data. Right, let's have a conversation about what the science shows and what the studies have shown. I've been a criminologist for almost 3 decades, and I can tell you right now that the literature is pretty consistent with the fact that, good police officers, good police departments, safe neighborhoods, people feel safe, and they don't feel the need to go out there and buy an AR-15 in order to defend their territory, because they feel that law enforcement will be there within 2 to 3 minutes if in case a priority one call ever comes about. So, it's really sad, right? So they kind of create their own catastrophe, their own monsters, and then they turn around and complain about it, but then they're the first ones to use that service whenever they need it.
Dr. Del Carmen, I'm kind of curious now. You teach criminology at Tarleton State University. What has happened as far as interest from students in getting involved in your field? Is it been pretty steady? Has it been declining over the course of the last 5 or 10 years? What have you seen?
No, I think criminology, criminal justice continues to be an amazing field of study that does provoke a great deal of interest. I often tell people that if you watch the 5 o'clock news in any jurisdiction in the United States, you will find that about 2/3 of the news are related to crime or criminal justice in one way or another. So, we find the relevance of the field. There is a lot of interest in the field. I just don't think that many people are considering anymore joining their local municipality in the law enforcement profession. I think many of them are considering, federal jobs. They're considering going on to law school or perhaps seeking a doctorate at some point. But no, our enrollment is exploding all over the country, and Tarleton is no exception to that. We have a great PhD program there that we started about 4 or 5 years ago for practitioners. And, it's going very well. But sadly, the local municipalities are the ones being affected because we require people to be 21 years of age at a minimum to be cops. And guess what? By that point, they almost have their bachelor's degree. So
Yeah, very true. I wonder, too, do you have a lot of women who enroll in your courses? The reason why I asked the question is my wife is among many women that I know that are absolutely fascinated with all the crime shows that are on TV. My wife it concerns the hell out of me that she likes Snapped as much as she does, but because that's about women mainly killing their husbands. But there's seems to be a tremendous amount of female interest in crime.
There is, and it's kind of interesting that you asked that, but our national figures actually show that a slight majority, so like maybe 52 to 53% of our undergraduate and graduate students in criminal justice are women, and that's actually increasing by the year. And so your wife is no exception to the count or to the interest. I think it's more about the fact that women as a whole have been empowered now with having jobs that they rightly so deserve, and they are better at the job than men are in terms of the law enforcement career, right? Because they're able to reason out and dialogue and do all the wonderful things that females do that we men lack, unfortunately. And I think you see that in the law enforcement profession. And so they're attracted to the profession. They want to solve the world's problems, and they're also really good at it, all of which reinforce the interest that we've seen in recent years.
Interesting stuff. I hadn't really thought of that angle before. Dr. Del Carmen, thanks as always, sir. A pleasure to talk to you. Be safe.
Thanks for having me.